Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today is André Sato, lead technical writer at Wildlife Studios. So hi, welcome, Andre, to Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast.
Thank you, Gauri.
Good. So, Andre, I would love to hear more about your profile. What is Wildlife Studios, and how is documentation related to you, please?
All right. Okay, so I'm the lead technical writer here at Wildlife Studios in São Paulo, Brazil, and Wildlife currently is one of the 10 largest game developers companies in the world. We develop mobile games. The company has around 90 years old, and we are expanding to more countries right now. The documentation area has begun last year, so it's only 1 year old, and my job here is to standardize, structure, and reduce backlog demands about our software documentation.
Great. So how did you end up doing the documentation for Wildlife Studios?
Well, I've been working as a technical writer for 5 years now, and I decided to pursue another challenge, let's say. Mm-hmm. I had a friend of mine working here at Wildlife, and he told me this is a good place. There is challenges and different things to learn about documentation, like another tools and implement processes from the scratch, and it caught my attention, and I decided to come here and see by myself how it is.
Great. It's always great to start from scratch, right? So you are like the process setter, and everyone follows, or everyone tries to understand how things roll out. Fantastic, Andre. So have you been dreamt of doing documentation right from your career start, or is this something that you kind of explored in the middle of your career?
Well, here in Brazil, software documentation is a new thing. It's not very common yet, like in other countries. I would say we are a few steps below, like Europe, for example. But the companies are looking for a specific profile to help with their documentation. And this is how they are discovering the technical writer. So I can't say that's something that I always wanted to do, because I didn't know about the area too. But when I was at college, or about to finish college, I found out this area, and it sounded very interesting for me.
Very nice. Great. So as you are currently setting up the process for documentation in Wildlife Studio, so can you just quickly brief as to what is your documentation process, and who all do you normally involve in setting the standards and the procedures?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the challenge here, we can split in two lines. One is to standardize what we already have about documentation, because if the area has only 1 year, but the company has 90 years old, some documentation has been written somehow, and the developers were in charge of writing the right documentation, but they realized that this wasn't the ideal process. So there's this thing about rewrite, standardize, restructure old content, but also I map demands. So if there's a new project or a new team beginning, I check with them what is being developed and if there is some documentation impacts, like here we like to provide an onboarding material for the new developers. So we write instructions about how to set up your environment, which basic tools do you need to start working here, who can you contact in case of, I don't know, a system crash or your email is not working any longer. Organize this kind of information. And one thing that is very helpful here is to write, for example, how to use a tool, because we create many in-house solutions here, and it needs a use documentation for each one.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So again, what are your important factors when you're considering of writing documentation for your SaaS business?
The factors is to consider who is my audience. If it's a game development team or a backend team, because they want to have different types of content, and understand what is being created by them is very, very important, because I cannot write about something if I didn't understand what is this, right? What is going to do.
True.
And also I make sure that I'm following the patterns of documentation, like simplified English and another rules.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I'm just curious to know who are your audience? Because when you said games, my boys play a lot of games. So are children some of your audiences reading those documentation?
Here, all of our documentation is internal. We are not customer facing for documentation. So I cannot say that I deliver something for our players, but I deliver content for the developers who makes our games.
Okay, fantastic. Wow. I know it has to be very precise and, as you rightly said, simple English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Super. So what role does documentation have in your customer service or success strategy, especially for developers?
That's a good point, because with this initiative to have a quality documentation, have things organized, everybody can find what they're looking for. Actually, we are fighting against knowledge loss, because there are lots of things that are created here, but the guys do not have time to, the guys, I mean the developers, do not have time to document it, to explain what are these or how they use a tool or a framework. And that's a problem. We are losing this knowledge.
Yeah. So basically, it's all in their head and there's nothing written on papers to pass on.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Or if there's only one guy who knows about one thing, and if this guy goes away, the knowledge is lost the same way.
Absolutely. And to be really honest, that's one of the biggest problems, not only in your field, but everywhere, right? Even in IT companies and finance institutes, sometimes they stay for many years, and when they leave, they take the knowledge as well with them. So that's where quality documentation plays a major role. very well said. Yeah. So I know you've just started bringing processes into Wildlife Studio, creating documents and enhancing the existing contents. Have you already started noticing any reduction in workload since introducing such quality documentation from your work?
Yes, we can see by providing these onboarding materials for the newcomers, because they do not book another guy's time to start to understand what they need to install, to configure. And we are also reorganizing our content. Here we use Confluence for our documentation. And we are reorganizing the content in Confluence to make it easier to find.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So thank you for mentioning the tool that you're using. And how do you measure the quality of your documentation? Of course, when the number of support tickets get reduced, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. That's a process that we are working on, but I would say that at this moment, the quality is measured in a very organic way. Like somebody consults the documentation, and if they find an information that is it's outdated or it's not valid anymore, they send a feedback to me or to my team.
Okay, and then that kind of leads you to write the contents, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, great. So again, I think you might have partly answered this for me. So are you currently generating any organic search traffic from your knowledge base?
Yeah, well, by having the content well organized and really written, it's something that caught the developers' attention, because they are not really used to consult Confluence and try to just looking for what they need to know. But that's something that we are changing here.
Okay. Is there any particular topic or category that you can pinpoint to me that's helping you to generate this organic search traffic?
One thing, it's I guess it's a mindset change, but that's something that we are working on, because if you once that you have like a space on Confluence for your project, but you have it structured and with relevant content or some, I don't know, some meetings, minutes of meetings or tech specs or something that are really, really useful for the team, I guess they will want to use to consult the documentation instead of just keep asking to one another, oh, do you know where can I find this? Or can you tell me how can I build this or that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. So let's move on to our rapid fire round. And so who have you learned the most about documentation from in your career?
For this question, I must thank my former documentation team. And was my first job as a technical writer. I've been helped and I could learn a lot with those guys. It was a very, very nice team.
Great. Super. So I'm sure you must be reading a lot of contents to enhance your skills and, of course, setting up processes. So can you share one or two documentation related resource you have recently consumed?
Mm-hmm. I like that forum, Write the Docs. I guess it's an amazing forum that everyone should visit. There are lots of content, very useful for us who works with documentation. That's one source that I like to visit. The other one that I found out recently is JP Doku School. It's also very nice, and it has some courses.
Super. Very nice. So now is an interesting question. So what is the one piece of documentation related advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
Let me see. I guess just make sure that the subject of what we're going to write about is crystal clear before start writing, because it's going to save you a lot of time.
Great. Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you, Andre, and have a good day. I know you're just starting the day, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Gauri. It was a really pleasure for me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.